Okay, of course she's talking about that warm up. We kind of are on like that roller coaster of temperatures, and it's going to start getting warmer and warmer as we ease into spring. It means it's start time to think about those spring allergies once again. And of course, pollen counts right now remain low across much of West Michigan, but soon it's likely we're going to start seeing allergy causing plants and trees and things like that to begin blooming. So here to help mitigate some of those issues is Dr. Todd Chassie with the Right Care Clinic here in Grand Rapids. I want to start with the most common allergens that we see in the springtime. What are those and how do they affect us?
Yeah, I think we're all excited for the warm weather, but lots of the pollens, as things start to bloom, that's when people are going to get the ragweed and all of the things that are blooming.
That's
going to
me.
start the
I'm
allergies.
the ragweed allergy sufferer. So ragweed pretty bad up here?
Not quite yet, but it's going to be bad when the things start to bloom.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the difference between like allergies and a cold. I think people kind of get that a little bit confused as we start easing into spring. You know, is it a cold? Is it the flu? Is it maybe COVID? Or do I just have a plain case of the allergies here and I maybe need to go talk to a doctor about what this season should look like for me?
Yeah, I think great question. And so when you have a cold, a fever is a true sign that this is an illness not related to allergies. Allergies are going to give you similar symptoms with the runny nose, the itchy red eyes, but you're not going to have that fever. You're not going to have body aches.
Yeah, have you guys seen anybody come in for allergies just yet, or is that still a couple of weeks off?
I think it's still a couple of weeks off. We had that great day on Friday, but we're not quite to allergy season yet.
Yeah, we're not quite there to like full peak bloom season. Just out of curiosity, when do you start seeing those patients come in for allergies? When do we really start to see things ramp up?
Yeah, I think once everything starts to come into full bloom is when we'll see people with the allergies that really start to take off. Hopefully they don't need to come to the emergency room. They can see their primary care doctor or use some of the over-the-counter solutions. But once everything starts to flower, you see the leaves start to come out, that's when everyone's going to start to be miserable.
Yeah, once you start seeing those yellow flowers on the sides of the road, the ragweed start to pop up. Tree pollen, I know, is also an issue for many folks. Again, I'm a ragweed allergy sufferer. So, for me, the symptoms are the runny nose, stuffy nose at times. Sometimes that will bleed over into a sinus infection for me. And then also I really get the runny runny, watery, and red eyes in the spring and the summer. So I guess what should people do if they start exhibiting some of those symptoms?
Yeah, I think there's lots of great options that people can take care of. One is just staying inside if the allergies are really bad, making sure that you're washing clothes, keeping windows closed, but then we've got all of those great over-the-counter treatments, things that used to be prescription many years ago, the generics for the Claritins, the Zyrtex, great medications that can help with the symptoms that you're talking about.
Yeah, let's talk about for those first-time allergy sufferers. Sometimes they get a bloom and it pops up all of a sudden. What should those folks do?
Yeah, again, I think over-the-counter options are great. Going to get one of those antihistamines that don't make you sleepy are going to help with a lot of those symptoms. You can use some of the over-the-counter nasal steroids. Those are probably some of the easiest solutions.
Okay, what about some symptoms that people might not realize are caused by allergies? I know we talked about the runny, watery eyes and the itchy eyes. We talked about the itchy nose, the runny nose. What are some other things that people may not realize might be caused by allergies?
I think some of those skin irritations, people will have their eczema flare, other skin flares, rashes that can be related to seasonal allergies also.
Well, that's too bad because some people get that dry, patchy eczema type skin in the winter, and then when it starts to get warmer, that can also be a symptom. What does that typically look like, or how does that usually manifest? And let's start with children. How does it normally manifest with them?
As far as the skin or the other allergies?
As far as the skin.
Yeah, I mean, again, you might see red, itchy spots. Maybe the children won't even let you know, but all of a sudden you'll just see them scratching, and that's definitely a tip-off to take a look at the skin and figure out what could be going on.
Now, I know some people will have allergies like the nose and the eye symptoms, and then later on develop skin symptoms like that. Is that something you typically see with patients, or is it usually that for the rest of their lives or their whole lives, do they keep one set of symptoms?
I think that's one of the most interesting things about allergies. You can have seasons where, maybe ragweed's not as bad and your allergies are better, and then the next year you have a really bad season. So I think it tends to take a course that can be up and down depending on the particular allergen and the individual. So 1 year doesn't mean it's going to look the same for you every year.
That's interesting that it can change from year to year, and it's got to be frustrating for a lot of people. You think you nail it with the treatment 1 year, the next year, it could go a little bit left or right depending on how your body reacts to it. I want to ask the difference between maybe, an over-the-counter type of situation for your allergy regimen and care. What about an allergy shot? Is that something that doctors are still recommending that folks can go?
Yeah, I think that's one of the nice things. There's so many different treatments. There's the over-the-counter medications that work for many people, but for those who have severe allergies, that's where the allergist, your primary care doctor, there definitely are still allergy shots that can be used. But again, that's for the smaller percentage of patients.
How does allergies affect, maybe sleep or daily life? I know people have a tough time sleeping at night. And a follow-up question to that, how can people mitigate those sleep issues with allergies?
Yeah, I think that that's one of the things that can be so miserable. You're trying to sleep and you're itchy, runny nose, and miserable. So I think really staying on top of the symptoms, the first sign, starting to take those medications to ensure that you still get good sleep throughout the spring season.
Yeah, something that I was curious about when we were bringing you in, when I was little, when I started to have my allergies manifest in the way that they did, something that I noticed was that I would be on a different medication each year, year after year. And finally, we found one that stuck. And, the only explanation that doctors could give me was that, hey, you just outgrew that medication. Is that typically the explanation? And what would your advice be to parents or children or just people in general trying to find that perfect regimen for them?
Yeah, I think sometimes as physicians we say this is what happened, but I don't think we actually know
Right.
if you outgrew it or not. And so I think the best thing is that there are multiple different medications, and if you have one that's not working, perfect time to try a different medication and hopefully find that perfect regimen to allow you to enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, I want to dive deeper into what you were talking about a little bit ago when you were saying the best ways to avoid some allergens, staying indoors, using air purifiers and things like that. But I want to talk more about clothing and like maybe bedding. How often should we be washing those for, for allergy care?
Well, I think if it was like Friday when we had the dust storm, probably every day. But I think for most of the spring season, at least once a week for your sheets, sooner if you're noticing symptoms. And then same thing for clothing, especially if you go outside and you notice the cars are covered, that's probably a perfect sign that things need to be washed that you've been wearing also.
Once you start to see that yellow shine on like the cars, or actually where I used to live, there was like some yellow pollen on some of the drive-through ledges, like when you would go through fast food and it was just covered in yellow stuff, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I need to start washing everything, basically, is what it feels like.
Absolutely. Don't forget the comforters too, the things that maybe you don't wash as frequently. Perfect time to remember seasonally to get that washed too.
Also, I'm probably, I'm thinking about, vacuuming the carpet as much as possible too, and maybe washing pets as well. Would that be something you guys would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, pets, we don't want to bathe them too much, but for sure, if you're noticing that your allergies are being triggered, everything that you can do to try and keep those allergies at bay.
When should somebody start to see a doctor? At what point do the symptoms progress far enough to where we need to see a doctor and really get this taken care of?
Yeah, I think if you're noticing, especially with those over-the-counter medications, that it's not taking care of your symptoms, where you might need something that's prescription or allergy shots, that's the perfect time to follow up with your doctor.
Okay, yeah, anytime that you're starting to notice maybe a change in your behavior with some of those things. Are kids, seniors, or just regular folks, or maybe folks with asthma at more risk, or would you say all of those people should be looking to mitigate those risks as much as possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see allergies in patients of all ages, and so I think everyone needs to be aware. And again, we never know, given the season, if this is going to be a really bad season or not. And so I think all patients of all ages should be on the lookout.
Yeah, I noticed that, I mentioned before, I typically tend to get, the sinus infection at least once a year, I believe caused by allergies. Is that a typical progression that you guys see allergies into something further like a sinus infection?
I think you can definitely see that. And the good thing is even sinus infections can be treated with over-the-counter decongestants. The generic for Sudafed is a great first-line treatment if you start to notice that intense sinus pressure.
Yeah. Is there anything that people can do now to get ahead of the allergy season? Again, we mentioned that we're still a few weeks out from peak bloom, or actually maybe even a month or so or longer. Anything that we can do now to get ahead of the peak bloom for allergy season here in West Michigan?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is have your medication ready. You don't want to be suffering from allergies and not have the medication that you want to use. And so be prepared now, I think, is the best advice.
Should we be taking that allergy regimen beforehand, before we think that peak bloom is going to start to affect us? Or is that something that doctors don't typically recommend?
Yeah, I think you can wait until you start to get symptoms, but if you know once you have those trigger symptoms, that's the perfect time to start thinking about taking the medications that work for you.
Any treatments that might be new that people don't know about that they might want to opt in for at this time?
I think for the patients who have severe allergies, that's where those specialists like the allergists, all sorts of new therapies, immune modulators and things like that are out there. And so again, that's going to be a very small percentage of people, but I think it's exciting to know that we've got additional treatments on the horizon.
All right, Dr. Todd Chassie with Right Care here in Grand Rapids joining us this morning to chat spring allergies. Of course, we really appreciate your time, and hopefully the allergy visits will be kept at bay for you guys, because I know it starts to get into that busy time as soon as we round that allergy season. All right, it is 9:14. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.